I met Bob in 1974. We worked together. And when I came home from work one day, I said to my father, "You know who works there? That Robert Longo." And he says, "Oh, he's a good golfer."
We were about 15, 16 years old. My pro at the course that I played at took me to a tournament called the Jenny Open. They announced this guy who I had no idea who he was, but I know he was a real presence. And he hit this launching tee shot, and that didn't meet him really then, but that's the first time I knew there was such a thing as a Bob Longo. Bob hit the ball 50 yards farther than most everybody back then. He had distance when no one else had distance.
Your world can change in seconds. Yeah.
I remember the day he had the stroke. We were playing Pelham Golf Club and the New York State Open qualifying.
Ironically, on that day, the Sea-Wing Club, where he was a head pro, was going to be honored as Club of the Year.
And I went through the tunnel to the third hole, and Bob was on, I think it was the 12th hole, and I said, "How you doing?" He goes,
I said, "I'm going home. I'll see you at the Golf Writers dinner." I said, "I got a little headache, so I'm just going to kind of go home and relax." So with that, I drove back to Long Island. I stopped at the club to see how the outing was going. I went home, got on the computer, was doing some work. Next thing you know, I was on the floor.
The plan was he was supposed to pick up my daughter from school so I can get home. I'm walking out of the building, and they said, "You have a phone call." And when I got there, it was my daughter, and she says, "Daddy just called and I don't understand him on the phone."
So I crawl to the kitchen and I make a phone call to my daughter saying that I can't pick up her sister from school.
He sounded like he was drunk and slurring. I called 911. I said, "I think my husband had a stroke." At that point, he was able to stand up. He didn't even want to get on the stretcher. And he goes, "Well, we have to go to Westchester tonight." And I said, "Well, I don't think we're going." He was still like functioning, but days later, the paralysis set in.
I came back to visit him, and I can tell you, I was really worried. He just wasn't there, and I didn't know, how he was going, but, he was back communicating, he had his voice back. Obviously, he didn't have his strength back. And I remember he told me the first time I went there, and I said, "Well, they started your rehab." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "They gave me a tissue. I couldn't tear it." That's how far he's come back from.
My buddy Bobby Hines came to visit me, and he said, "I don't look like the way you look, Bob." He says, "I've never seen you without a tan." So he rolled me outside. It was funny.
He just laid back and went like this. And this was from, say, June. This was now in August. So he hadn't been outside for 2 months.
I mean, if you saw Bob when he had the stroke, it was just devastating to see what he looked like. Totally paralyzed on one side. And the comeback he made, because he's a fighter. He wasn't going to give up and say, "This is it, I'll never do it." Nope.
He could hardly hold the club. So I can tell you, the fact that he plays golf now from that day really shows the fortitude and the love of golf that he always had. He never quit. He never gave up. It's a remarkable thing. Like I said, he's right back there, the same Bob Longo I know, minus the golf swing, and minus the golf game. But he hasn't changed a bit to me.
If anybody deserves it, he deserves it. Yeah.
Teaching is a passion of mine. I've taught so many years, and I love doing it. So it's just nice to be able to do what you love. And to be around you guys. We're all part of a family, so it's touching. It really is.